Well, welcome back into Talking Fitchburg. Joining me today from Hy-Vee right here in Dane County because she's at all of them. But we like her when she comes to Fitchburg. It's Andrea Miller. Andrea, welcome back to the show. How are you doing this November?
I am doing great. Thank you.
Well, we're glad you're here. And this November, as every November is National Diabetes Month. And what a great time to talk about diabetes and as a whole, and what is, it can be scary. There's so many different things to talk about. And I've already picked your brain enough before we started this, so we'll jump right into this. In general, I think we want to share just a little general information and then some more Q&A. But in general, how does blood sugar work, and what's happening with somebody that has diabetes?
Right. So it's a very good question to start, because there's a lot of unknown, and sometimes we can, generate fear in the unknown. So education can be very powerful for people to start. And a couple things to think about with blood sugar is we all have blood sugar. Okay. The whole intent throughout the day is for our blood sugar to go up and down. Okay. So we do want a rise, and we do expect a fall in blood sugar for everybody, regardless of diabetes status. Okay. The other thing to take into consideration is that our blood sugar and the way that it protects us, keep that in mind, that it's affected by other things, not just by the food we eat. So for instance, when we're under stress, our body responds by pulling sugar out of storage and shooting it into our bloodstream, so we have energy. Okay, our bodies are designed to physically get out of danger, regardless if we're under emotional stress or mental strain, not physical danger. That's how our bodies are designed. So if you kind of have that mental picture, when we're under stress, the body shoots blood sugar into the bloodstream so you can flee that stressful situation.
Nope, go ahead. Yeah, I was just gonna say it's something that I don't think that I've heard over the years, that stress does play a big role in that. So sort of surprising in some factors. And I feel like this November, compared to, we've been dealing with the pandemic and stuff. So I feel like everybody's probably a little bit on the stress side. So very interesting that that's tied to it.
And we probably all know someone, if it's not ourselves, a close family member, a friend, a coworker, we all know somebody who's affected by diabetes, or may have, pre-diabetes looming, from some of their doctor visits, that kind of thing. So it's good to educate yourself and become aware of what you can do to help prevent or help delay the onset of diabetes, and kind of take that control back, so it's not such a scary thing, and it doesn't seem so not manageable. There's a lot we can do.
Absolutely. And that kind of takes us to our next question here, is what should someone do when they do find out either they're pre-diabetic, which I've said for years, everybody's pre-diabetic, until you clinically you're said that. But anyway, and then diabetes as a whole. So where do you go from there? Because that, like you said, it's pretty intense news.
Right. So on one hand, I would take it seriously. I would take it as a serious situation. However, not panic. So what we do know is panic and worry and stress do not help our blood sugar and do not help with diabetes as a whole. So taking it seriously without panicking is my first recommendation. And then the next thing is to look at overall lifestyle factors. What's pretty typical is we like to kind of hone in on carbohydrates and stop eating carbohydrates, stop eating sugar, cut everything out. And it's kind of this extreme reaction. And my recommendation is actually to look at your lifestyle as a whole. Okay. How often are you eating? Are you nourishing your body during the day? Do you drink water? Do you move your body? Are you sleeping well? Try to get kind of an overall picture, and then think about like what's in excess or really lacking, and then start there. So if somebody drinks, lots and lots of soda, that may be a good place to start. If somebody's only eating once a day and nothing the rest of the day, that might be a good place to start. Okay. So I kind of think of looking at where is excess coming in. Most of us kind of know if something we're kind of doing too much of or not at all. So kind of looking at the extremes and starting there first and kind of start to normalize some of those lifestyle habits, kind of normalize some of that behavior, and then take it one thing at a time.
Yeah, if you've watched these segments with us, there's one piece of advice I think you and I am on the very, very, very slow track of changing my lifestyle, but that's okay. And I think that's so important, and especially tying it here is everybody's body's different and everybody moves at a different pace, and trying to make those changes just right away, and you're gonna, it's tough. And I think a big question for a lot of people, and this was one that I was curious about too, the different types of sugar, and should you, whether you do focus on the carbs, or how is it working to you? What's the difference in the sugars that you are taking in?
Yeah, so there's lots of different sugars, more than we even realize. There's sugar in fruit and milk sugar and grain sugar and cane sugar and beet sugar, all from different sources. So the general information to take from that is the differences in sugar has more to do with digestion than it does necessarily to do with blood sugar. So with that being said, you can kind of lump all sugar and all carbohydrates into the same pot when you're talking about how does it affect blood sugar, okay, in general. Now, there's going to be some sugars that will tend to spike the blood sugar, and sometimes that's desirable. Somebody with a low blood sugar might need some orange juice to, get in there really quick to kind of get them back on track. And then there's some other carbohydrates that have a lot of fiber in them, for instance, that slow everything down. So it's a nice steady increase and a nice steady decrease. So how our blood sugar is affected does have something to do with the type of sugar or carbohydrate, but in general, we focus on carbohydrates as a whole. And we tried to eat at one time some foods with carbohydrate, some without. That's where you get that balance. So when you have that kind of regular intake and balanced intake, that's when you have the best chance for a slow, steady increase of blood sugar and a slow, steady decline.
What happens for family? So if you are diagnosed or pre-diabetic, whatever the case may be, and you're looking at this like, well, I've got a family, and how am I going to eat? I don't want to pull all the carbs. What's good for me or bad for whatever the case may be. How do you pull? What's your recommendation when it's a family member that's just been diagnosed and trying to find the right food for everyone?
That's an excellent question, because it's usually not affecting somebody by themselves, right? It's usually a broader effect. And so the good news is, and I tell people this all the time, that we should all eat as if we have diabetes.
Why didn't you tell me that to begin with? Man,
we all have blood sugar, right? We all want it to rise at a normal pace and drop at a normal pace. And keep in mind, what's going on is somebody who has diabetes, their blood sugar isn't coming down on its own far enough, or it isn't coming up on its own well enough. Okay. And so that's where the misstep is with somebody who has diabetes. So if you think about that, everybody's blood sugar goes up and down. So we want to make that as a normal process as possible, so we don't stress our body out, regardless of our age or gender or family history of diabetes. So with that, think about, eating whole foods, eating foods from the food groups, having that balance of carbohydrate and non-carbohydrate foods. And that all has to do with energy level too. So anybody who doesn't have diabetes, they're going to benefit from the fact that they have a nice steady energy level, because they're not putting in a bunch of sugar and nothing else, or no carbohydrate and just, meat and cheese. And so whenever we have that balance, we benefit from our blood sugar, our blood sugar benefits, but we also benefit in other ways. So the whole family can participate. I think on another note, one of the big misconceptions too is to think I have to start eating everything sugar-free. I have to buy all these special foods and special products. And that's not necessarily the case either. When we start looking at whole foods that don't have carbohydrate in them, and you eat them with the foods that do, you naturally create that balance without having to purchase special foods to make it happen.
Yeah, I was blown away by the carbs that just you know, because again, bad thinking on my part, but just thinking of sugary drinks, sugary foods, you know, unhealthy foods, and how that all tied together, and puts, you know, can put you into the spot. It's an interesting thing, and I can see rushing out and purchasing some books. May or may not have done that, but in a sense that, yeah, you feel like, oh my gosh, I got to change everything, and I got to watch for sugar-free this, and it's a lot of education. And I think talking to experts like yourself is a great starting point to really put it in perspective. And as you said at the start of this interview, is just, you just got to kind of just slow down. You know, it's, yes, it's a scary finding out, but there's so many paths forward because we've learned so much throughout the as time goes on.
Right. A lot of research on a lot of points to, you know, looking at our lifestyle factors and how that kind of plays a role, because we think of it as specifically related to carbohydrate, but it's not just about food. You know, there's other aspects of it too that can continue to help with where we're at.
All right, Andrea, thank you so much for your time. I know we could spend a lot more time talking on this topic and all the topics. Certainly go back and check out Andrea and the information that she shared here on the show. And Andrea, if people do have questions and want to learn more, where can they find you?
Yes, so can reach right out on our website at Hy-Vee.com and go to the dietitian page and can search me by city or state. Otherwise, we've provided my direct email and phone line as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And you stay safe out there. And we'll look forward to checking back in with you next month.
Sounds great.
All right. Andrea Miller said right here in Fitchburg in Dane County. She's the dietitian and our dietitian. I say this all the time. TF's dietitian for sure. So we appreciate that. All right. Well, let's take a quick break. More to come. You're watching Talking Fitchburg.